Part 9. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hangu. Chapter 81. The Zen room was filled with a faint aroma of herbs, mixed with the smell of burned incense. Before Zhangshuyu could perform Buddhist rituals, Master Huiwen said to Zhangshuyu, "Donor, please follow the poor monk to Baoguang Hall." The young novice monk was shocked. That was a place where the relics of eminent monks were enshrined. Even if the royal family members came, the master would not take the initiative to invite them in. The young novice didn't dare to ask any more questions and was about to follow him. "You don't have to follow me. You are all busy with your own business." The young novice stopped immediately. "Miss, I..." Qiuju raised her eyes and looked at Zhangshuyu, not knowing whether to follow or not. Zhangshuyu also wondered, did Master Huiwen realize that she was a time traveler? "Put aside the others and talk to her alone if you have something to say." She pointed to the futon in the Zen room, "Just sit there and wait. Baoguang Hall is on the second floor." Zhangshuyu followed Master Huiwen towards Baoguang Hall with complicated emotions. The majestic temples sit one next to another, occupying the entire top of the mountain. Walking up to the second floor, looking into the distance from the corridor, you can have a panoramic view of the high and low roofs. The glazed tiles on the roof of the temple are magnificent and magnificent. Zhangshuyu was speechless when she saw it. It was indeed the temple closest to the capital, and the late emperor spent a lot of money on it. "Does the donor know the relic?" Master Huiwen stopped and opened a door next to him. The golden light in the room suddenly poured out. There is a small golden tower in the middle of the room, with scriptures placed around it. Of course Zhangshuyu knew what relics were. In Femane Temple, Shaanxi Province. A finger bone relic of Sakyamuni Buddha is still enshrined, which is at least 2,500 years old when she traveled through time. There is also Nanjing Dabaoan Temple. The only real bone of the Buddha's crown in the world is enshrined there, which is particularly precious. In her previous life, Zhangshuyu had the honor to follow her mentor to visit him. Later she found out that if their mentor's friend hadn't given them the green light, they wouldn't even be able to enter the palace where the relics are enshrined. She heard that there were several other places where relics were enshrined, but she had no chance to see them again. Zhangshuyu approached the pagoda and asked softly, "Are the relics that the master mentioned are offered here?" She vaguely felt that Master Huiwen had seen through her origins. Otherwise, why would he bring her to see the relics, which are as precious as national treasures, for no reason? She neither nodded nor denied that she knew about the relic. Master Huiwen stood calmly in front of the golden pagoda. Master Jingkong passed down the mantle, and the poor monk only understood part of it. "Donor, you have come all the way, so you must know the book left by Master Jingkong, right?" Zhangshuyu just looked at the relics and the shining golden pagoda. She was wondering whether the tower was real gold or gold-plated. If it was real gold, it would be very valuable. No monk in Qinglian Temple should call himself a poor monk. When it comes to poverty, it has to be yourself. "Book, what book?" Zhangshuyu completely ignored the master's words from afar. "I saw Master Huiwen pull out a book from under the scriptures. Compendium of Materia Medica." A few simplified characters made Zhangshuyu feel numb all over, as if she had been struck by lightning. It turns out that Master Jingkong is a time travel senior. She swallowed and raised her eyes to look at the relics in the golden pagoda. "I secretly cursed in my heart, Senior, you came here with a book, but I came here with nothing. No, I haven't even paid back the money I spent, so how could I bring anything here? If you do more good deeds that benefit the country and the people, will you be able to burn 2 relics for future generations to admire?" Thinking that she was already a mother every year, she immediately rejected her idea. The poor monk did not miss the mark. The benefactor really recognized the words on it. Master Jingkong had already predicted that you would bring the treasure and come on the auspicious clouds to save all people from the fire and water. The more Master Huiwen talked, the more excited he became. He looked at Zhang Shiyu with the same piety as he looked at the relic. Zhang Shiyu, I didn't come here on auspicious clouds, but I clearly stepped on dog shit as soon as I came here. Zhang Shiyu took the compendium of Materia Medica handed over by Master Huiwen with both hands and gave a wry smile. Master, you are overly praised. How can a little girl be so capable? At this moment, Zhang Shiyu was even more certain that she was a time traveler with a mission. In front of Master Huiwen, she had nothing to hide. She flipped through a few pages and said frankly, my little girl does understand the words above. What does the master want to know? I will write it down for you right now. Master Jingkong predicted that you would come. He left his last words. When you come, I will give you this book so that you can develop an antidote to the epidemic as soon as possible. She epidemic. Zhang Shiyu's head was buzzing. Medical science here was backward, and a real epidemic would not be a joke. She raised her eyes and looked at the date of Master Jingkong's death recorded on the pagoda. It has been more than 200 years ago, which means that Master Huiwen is the guardian of several generations. More than 200 years ago, Master Jingkong could know what would happen in the future. This is amazing. She is also a time traveler, so she doesn't know what will happen tomorrow. Is it because I am not a pure child? She scolded Xiao Jingzhao secretly in her heart, and then turned her gaze to the crystal clear, red glowing relic. Master Huiwen seemed to have read through Zhang Shiyu's thoughts. He said, the poor monk is the third-generation successor and the third-generation guardian. Zhang Shiyu closed the book and held it in her arms, as if holding the emperor's imperial seal, which was heavy. Did Master Jingkong leave anything behind? Can I see it? Yes, there are no real objects, but a picture album and some text. Master Huiwen walked to the other side of the golden pagoda and pulled out a booklet from under the scriptures. Zhang Shiyu took a deep breath, unable to contain her excitement. What would Master Jingkong leave behind? Donor, please be careful and don't turn the pages too quickly. These are all Master Jingkong's relics. Seeing Zhang Shiyu put down the compendium of Materia Medica respectfully, Master Huiwen handed over the yellowed booklet. Zhang Shiyu walked to a cushion a few feet away from the golden pagoda and sat cross-legged. She silently chanted Amitabha and then gently turned to the first page. Zhang Shiyu's eyes widened, and what came into view was a set of firefighter uniforms. I don't know if it was well preserved or repainted later. The red firefighter uniforms in the painting did not fade much. There was a line of small characters under the palm-sized picture. The small characters were written in simplified Chinese characters. Zhang Shiyu took a look at it and saw a few words that recorded the identity of Master Jingkong in his previous life. Zhang Shiyu was so excited that tears welled up in her eyes. It turned out that Jingkong was a firefighter who was obsessed with traditional Chinese medicine. He died in the line of duty during a mission, and then he woke up and found that he was in this place. Zhang Shiyu silently prayed in her heart, may the Bodhisattva bless all firefighters to be safe and sound. She looked up at Master Huiwen who was twisting the Buddhist beads in his hand. Master, do you know the origin of Master Jingkong? Master Huiwen asked back, are you from the same hometown as Master Jingkong? After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 82. Zhang Shiyu nodded, don't lie in front of a real person. Master, you have a sharp eye. I come from the same place as Master Jingkong. I hope you can keep it a secret for me. I don't want a third person to know this. Master Jingkong entered the Buddhist monastery and endured until his death. She couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't be dragged out and burned as a monster, or that she wouldn't burn out the relics. That's natural. I will keep my mouth shut. Master Huiwen folded his hands, Amitabha, a great disaster is coming. The donor has come from afar to save the people from the water and fire. I am grateful to the donor on behalf of the people. Please go back and develop an antidote as soon as possible. Thank you for your trust, Master. I will start preparing after I go back. There are many kinds of epidemics. Zhang Shuyu remembered that there might be a flood after a drought, and she had an idea in her mind. She continued to look through the manual left by Master Jing Kong, which contained his autobiography. He had a compassionate heart, and his extraordinary adventures made him decide to become a monk despite his family's opposition. There are still several prescriptions recorded in it, all of which are combinations for treating common typhoid fever and burns. After reading it, Zhang Shuyu returned the manual to Master Huiwen with both hands, and then held the compendium of Materia Medica and bowed respectfully to Master Jing Kong's relics. Back to the Zen room, Zhang Shuyu drew a lot. Without a doubt, it was a very good lot. Kyoja saw Master Huiwen handing over the bamboo sticks, and she asked, "Master, you haven't interpreted the lot yet. Does the very good lot mean that my daughter has good fortune or good marriage?" Master Huiwen glanced at Zhang Shuyu, lowered his eyelids and nodded slightly. "Donor, it's better not to interpret the lot. In short, it's invaluable." At this time, in King Yunzai, the scholars rushed to a painting. A scholar recited passionately, "The flower blooms not among the hundreds of flowers, but stands alone by the sparse fence, which is endlessly interesting. I would rather die with fragrance on the branch, than be blown away by the north wind." Wonderful! Wonderful, what a good poem about cold chrysanthemum. Nangang Ziyu and Sushui sat in a corner of the study. Seeing the scholars looking at the poems on the wall, it was as if they had seen a confidant. Some scholars were moved to tears as if their heart knots were revealed. Mr. Minjiu's poem about cold chrysanthemum expresses the bitterness in our hearts. We study hard in the cold window just to serve the court. No one recommends us to enter the officialdom, so we can only die with regrets. Sushui pulled Nangang Ziyu's sleeve and whispered, "Uncle Nangang, the poems written by Mother are really amazing, making such a big person cry." Nangang Ziyu didn't know that Zhang Shuyu's poem used cold chrysanthemum / painting chrysanthemum by Zheng Sixiao, a poet of the Song dynasty. He bowed his head and said, "Your mother is amazing, and Uncle Nangang admires her very much." Nangang Ziyu had never thought of pursuing a career in politics. The little knowledge he had was not as much as Sujin's. In the crowd, Zhen Jingxiu stared at the poem on the wall silently. Suddenly, a light flashed in his eyes. What familiar words! The scholars were so excited that no one noticed that Zhen Jingxiu quietly left the study and walked across the street. "Don't crowd around. Copy it down quickly." The words awakened the dreamer, and the scholars turned to look for the 4 treasures of the study on the desk. Suddenly, the huge room was filled with the fragrance of ink. "Sir, do you need anything? There are books in the next room, you can read them at will." The servant saw that everyone was busy writing, and Nangang Ziyu was sitting there stupidly with a child. Seeing that he was a stranger, the servant came up to remind him that he could read books for free here. "Thank you, I'll take the child over to have a look." Nangang Ziyu smiled and bowed. "Uncle Nangang, I want to read the policy paper, there should be some here, right?" Sui Sui raised his head, his eyes curved. Nangang Ziyu saw the shock on the servant's face, he coughed and said, "Don't read that stuff, it's very boring, Uncle will take you to read travel notes and liaisai." "Then how about reading Romance of the Three Kingdoms?" The servant had never seen a child who was enlightened so early, he couldn't help but ask, "The book that the young master said, we don't have it in King Yunzai, may I ask where the young master has seen it? Can you recommend 1 or 2, we will buy it tomorrow and put it on the bookshelf for the convenience of scholars to read." Although Nangang Ziyu is not a big fan of Zhihu, he also knows the names of some of the most read books. He asked in confusion, "Where have you seen this book? Is it about the stories of the neighboring countries around Dongling Kingdom?" Sui Sui pursed his lips, raised his head and glanced at the servant, the bedtime story my aunt told me was very interesting. Nangong Ziyu. Before Sui Sui went to bed, he wanted to give Sui Sui a foot massage, but he didn't know if Miss Zhang would agree. Across the street, Zhen Jingzio stood for a moment, then turned around and walked back. In the study, an old man with gray hair and beard stood in front of the wall, with his hands behind his back. The old man was over 50 years old, neither fat nor thin, with a fair face. He must have been a handsome young man when he was young. The breeze blew up a strand of silver hair, and the sun shone in from the window lattice. His tall figure was reflected on the ground, looking a little lonely. This woman is very talented. A couplet expresses the bitterness and tenacity. I admire her. Grandfather. A clear voice sounded outside the door. Xiu'er, come in quickly. Grandfather seems to understand the meaning of the couplet. Zhendixioshi turned around and waved to Zhen Jingziu. This eldest grandson of the first house was studious and steady, and was highly valued by Zhendixioshi. Zhen Jingziu walked in slowly and nodded. My grandson saw it at first sight. That girl is not an ordinary person. Grandfather, one of her poems appeared in the study today. Write it quickly and let's see. Zhendixioshi walked to the desk impatiently and started to grind the ink himself. Zhen Jingziu quickly memorized the poem. Zhendixioshi stroked his beard after reading it and praised, a girl in the boudoir has such great ambitions, she is really talented. Xiu'er, if such a talented girl marries to another family, wouldn't it be a pearl in the dust? Grandfather will ask the housekeeper to prepare a gift tomorrow. Zhen Jingziu knew what his grandfather meant. His grandfather was going to prepare for him to come to the door to propose marriage. Zhen Jingziu's ears turned red, and he said shyly, Grandfather, are we too abrupt? Zhen Jingziu waved his wide sleeves, Grandson, don't worry, Grandfather knows how to behave. I'll ask the housekeeper to send a moderate gift to congratulate the new neighbor on his new house, so as to get closer and not be abrupt. Grandfather, please be busy first, I'll go see if Grandma is feeling better. Zhen Jingziu blushed, and when he turned around, he almost had a close contact with the doorframe. Zhendixioshi looked at his grandson who was running away in a panic, and smiled and shouted to his grandson's back, slow down, your grandma's dizziness is an old problem, she will be fine after lying down for a few days. At the foot of the mountain of Qinglian Temple, Zhang Xue carefully put the compendium of Materia Medica into the secret compartment of the carriage wall. Qiuju joked, Miss, you are always so popular. Master Huiwen almost gave you a cassock. Zhang Xue. Fortunately, this girl's mouth was not blessed, otherwise, her dream of hugging a gentle and jade-like, unparalleled young man would be shattered. But the book is so strange. Those words seem familiar to me but I can't recognize them clearly. I always feel that something is missing. Qiuju thought for a while and said, I remember it now. It looks like a cripple with missing arms and legs. Do you know him, miss? I guess. As the master and servant were talking, the carriage stopped after a jolt. Then Gao Mu shouted, who is it? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hangu. Chapter 83. Qiuju was so frightened that her whole body trembled. Little miss, did you encounter a robber again? Zhang Xue grabbed Qiuju's hand and said, don't be afraid, we are not far from the city gate. They won't be mountain bandits, at most they will be just a few small bandits. Just when Zhang Xue was going to get the medicine bag under the couch, she heard someone talking outside the carriage. Duh, heroes, what a coincidence, I meet you again, don't draw your sword, we don't mean any harm. No malice. Why are you blocking our way? Kang Yun drew his sword and asked angrily. Please ask the girl in the car to point us to a clear path. We finally made it to the capital, but the city guards refused to let us in. Hearing the conversation outside, Zhang Xiu opened the car curtain a crack. I saw a large group of people standing on both sides of the official road. Those people were holding sickles and sticks in their hands. They were the same group of villagers Julianpo met. Zhang Xiu held her forehead. I have seen stupid people, but I have never seen such stupid people. They went to the city gate ready to fight. If Jingzai's cell was not too small, this group of people would have a place to eat. She said through the car curtain, you have to spread out and pretend to be people selling vegetables in the city. There are only about 200 of you entangled together. The city guards are being polite if they don't arrest you. The leader cupped his hands and said, thank you for your advice, young lady. The common people are only going to the capital to ask for some disaster food. They will not disturb the people. The carriage started again, and Qiuju let out a long sigh of relief. Miss, my little heart has been frightened to a sudden stop by these idiots. Do you want to check my pulse? Qiuju felt flustered and short of breath, and her face turned pale. Puff. Look, I'm scaring you. With Gao Mu and Kang Yun here, what are you afraid of? Zhang Xiu couldn't help laughing unkindly when she saw Qiuju's appearance. Gao Mu took over the words outside the carriage. Miss is right, as long as Kang Yun and I are here, no one can even think of hurting you even a hair. In order to reassure Qiuju, Gao Mu added, before the prince gave us to the young lady, a competition was held in the secret guard camp, and Kang Yun and I came out on top. Real. Qiuju knew that the secret guard's skills were certainly not bad, let alone those who could come out on top. How can it be false? With your words, I won't be afraid of being mugged next time. Qiuju's face turned red again. Zhang Xiu. Can I still have this girl? I didn't expect anything good. By the way, Zhang Jiaojiao returned to the house in a hurry, went directly to the main courtyard, and told Mrs. Yang about her meeting with Zhang Xiu. Yang was so shocked that she sat down in the armchair, beating the armrest of the armchair with a mournful face. It's over, that bitch is so lucky, she actually came back alive. Zhang Jiaojiao stamped her feet anxiously. Mom, this is not an easy matter. She must have a backer behind her. It will be difficult to kill her. Please think of a way. It's all because of my poor thinking. If I had known she was going to come back and ruin your marriage, I should have let her die on Zhuangzi without anyone noticing. There was no fierceness in Yang's eyes, but the words he spoke were extremely vicious. She glanced at the hourglass in the room and said to the maid behind her, the master will be back soon. Hurry, call the master over here. The maid left in a hurry. Zhang Jiaojiao's eyes were red and she said, Mom, that bitch can't believe my words anymore. The only solution now is to ask Dad to call her back and make long-term plans. Hey. That's all. When she returns home and you successfully get married, Mother will teach her well. What Mother said is that you are in charge of her marriage anyway, and she is not perfect. When the time comes, let the matchmaker find a widower for her, prepare a small dowry and send her away. When it came to marrying Zhang Xiu to a widower, Zhang Jiaojiao felt extremely happy. So what if she is more beautiful than him? In the end, you have to be overwhelmed by yourself. Thinking that she would become a serious official wife when she married Mr. Wu. When the time came, Zhang Xiu would have to salute her when she saw her. Zhang Jiaojiao couldn't suppress the smile on her lips. Zhang Zhengming, who had just returned home from duty, had not had time to change out of his official robe when he saw the maid in Yang's house coming over to invite him over. The maid didn't say why she invited him over. He just assumed that the Wu family had come together to prepare the Naji ceremony. Zhang Zhengming walked towards the backyard with light steps and a spring breeze on his face. Even when he was passing by the garden, he felt very beautiful when he saw the flowers that were about to wither on the branches. If it weren't for the maid behind him, he would have wanted to hum a few songs he learned in his concubine's room. Jiao did the Wu family send a message? One day I sent Najib's gift. My father was not at home when I asked for my name. This time, my father. Zhang Zhengming couldn't wait to ask questions before he even entered the door. When he walked to the door and saw the gloomy faces of both Yang and her daughter, he was stunned for a moment. This is what you are doing. Dad. My daughter is dead, Zhang Jiao cried whenever she wanted. Her tears kept falling down as if she was free of money. Zhang Zhengming said anxiously, Jiao please stop crying. What happened? Is it because the horoscope is not going well? Mrs. Yang also sobbed and said, there are many people in the capital who have incompatible horoscopes and got married. If it were just a mismatch in horoscopes, I could still have the shamelessness to say that I misremembered Jiao's birth date, but this. Mrs. Yang thought that if her daughter was disowned by the Wu family, no one from the high-ranking family in the capital would come to propose marriage. The more she thought about it, the sadder she became, and she was heartbroken. Seeing his favorite woman and daughter crying out of breath, Zhang Zhengming was in a state of confusion. He asked eagerly, what happened? There's no point in crying. Kaiyan stepped forward with great discernment, gave her a blessing, and said softly, Master, don't be anxious, I will allow you to come one by one. After listening to Kaiyan's narration, Zhang Zhengming swayed. Kaiyan was closest to him and he quickly supported her. Sir, sit down quickly. The second young lady sincerely asked the eldest lady to come back to the house today. Not only did the eldest lady ignore the second lady, she also said that even if the emperor beheads the Shangshu mansion, it has nothing to do with her. Master, what you said about the eldest lady is too vicious. After all, she still has the master's blood flowing on her body. Kaiyan kept bashing her mouth, adding words of jealousy. Veins popped up on Zhang Zhenming's forehead. What a sin! If I had known she hated me so much, I should have asked the clansmen to take her to the sinking pond. Zhang Zhengming was furious. Mrs. Yang was born with a charming look, and she cried so much that she was so cute and lovable. Zhang Zhengming was even more angry at the lingering eldest daughter. Seeing that the fire was almost done, Mrs. Yang raised her hand to wipe her tears. Master, don't say angry words. Although Yu is unfilial, she is still your flesh and blood. How can you let her be drowned by the clan? Those sisters-in-law insist on you can't say I'm the one who provoked you. Madam, don't worry, I will never let such a wicked woman step through the door of my Shangshu mansion again. Zhang Jiao saw that her father might be wrong, so she quickly said, Dad, don't pursue the mistakes that eldest sister has made. She has been wandering outside for several years. Why don't you call her back and don't let her be embarrassed outside? After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 84. Zhang Zhengming glared, and said with a flick of his sleeves, she is expecting me to die, why do you still want her to come back? For such an evil girl, I, Zhang Zhengming, will just pretend that I have never given birth to her, and turn a blind eye to her. Zhang Jiao. Is he adding fuel to the fire too much? Yang was very satisfied with Zhang Zhenming's fierce reaction. She sobbed weakly, husband, calm down. This matter concerns Jiao's marriage. If she talks nonsense outside, Madame Wu is a reasonable person. I'm afraid that the old lady of the Wu family will listen to one side and not know people well. This, I really didn't think so much. I thought that the evil girl wanted to return to the Shangshu mansion. Zhang Zhengming was stunned. He thought that Zhang Shuyu had seen that many years had passed, and he was no longer angry. She would think that she was also his daughter who was spoiled in the past, and she would definitely find ways to return to the mansion. Dad, Mother never told you that my elder sister said one thing in front of me and another behind my back. She was nice to me and Mother in front of you, but when you didn't see it, she looked down on me. Dad really thought he had raised her very well. It's all your fault. Our little girl has been wronged. Jiang Zhengming was heartbroken. He was a minister of the Ministry of Revenue who was a jinchi, but he couldn't even teach his daughter well. What a failure. Yang waved the silk handkerchief in her hand, looking generous. Husband, don't blame you anymore. You should go and call her back to the mansion yourself. We will discuss the matter of putting her back on the family tree. The most urgent thing is not to let her ruin the reputation of our Shangshu mansion. Jiang Zhenming's face was dark, not knowing what to do. If he asked him to call that evil girl back home, would he still have this old face? If he didn't go, what the lady said was reasonable. If the Wu family knew that their eldest daughter was resurrected, no matter how they explained, it would be useless. If he ignored it, the Wu family would know and would most likely come to cancel the engagement. After weighing the pros and cons, Jiang Zhenming gritted his teeth and said, I'll go, I'll call that evil girl back. Madam, you'll discipline her more in the future. If she refuses to repent, we'll send her to the farm to be strictly guarded after our daughter gets married. Yang looked at Jiang Zhenming tenderly, I dare not disobey my husband's words. When Yu comes back, I'll ask the disciplinary nanny from the palace to teach her the rules. I will definitely not let my husband down. After Jiang Shuyu left, Yang sent Wang back to her parents' home. In order to control Wang and prevent her from gossiping outside, Yang also instigated her sister-in-law to take Wang's granddaughter Dongmei as her roommate. Yang Mao's legs were already disabled, and taking a concubine would affect his marriage even more. He only wanted Dongmei to be a maidservant. Jiang Zhengming was very satisfied. Although Yang was promoted by his aunt, she never spoiled him and always put him first in everything. It is said that a woman's husband is her heaven, and she did a good job. Seeing his most satisfied daughter wipe away her tears, Jiang Zhengming asked, Jiao, do you know which inn she lives in? Dad will take someone to call her back. She lives in. Where does she live? Jiang Jiao was stunned. She didn't even know where Jiang Shuyu lived, so where should her father go to call her back? Seeing her daughter speechless, Yang urged, Jiao, don't be afraid. With your father's support, your elder sister won't dare to bully you when she returns home. Tell your father where she lives. Yang didn't forget to apply eye drops to Jiang Zhengming with every word. This has been her habit for many years. Jiang Jiao looked embarrassed. Mother, I was scolded by my elder sister today, and I forgot to ask her where she was staying. The second young lady was scolded by the elder sister and cried. I thought the elder sister would come home to make trouble soon. The elder sister was so fierce, I dare not say anything. Kaiyan took the opportunity to please her master and trampled on Jiang Shuyu again. Jiang Zhengming stood up and said, I will send the housekeeper to find out. Dad, if the elder sister comes back by herself, please be patient and don't mention that she scolded my daughter in Qinglian Temple. I don't want you to quarrel with her because of me. Jiang Zhengming looked at his well-behaved and sensible daughter, and his eyes softened a little. Don't worry, Jiao, Dad knows the limit. At this time, Dad will not bother with that evil girl. After Jiang Zhengming went out, he called the housekeeper and several capable servants to the study and gave them some instructions. The housekeeper left with the servants. Following Jiang Zhengming's instructions, the housekeeper started to check the inns on the streets near the Shangshu mansion. From east to west, they checked dozens of inns in a row, but until night fell, they did not find any news about Jiang Shuyu. Jiang Jiao and her daughter were as anxious as ants on a hot pot at home. Seeing that the housekeeper returned empty-handed, Jiang Jiao and her daughter were dumbfounded. Mother, I am sure she will find a way to return to the Jiang family. She hasn't come yet at this time, and I don't know where she lives. What should I do? Jiang Jiao twisted the silk handkerchief in her hand into a rope. Jiao, don't worry. Mother will send Mrs. Ju to the Taiwei mansion. After Yang sent Mrs. Wang back to her parents' home, she promoted Mrs. Chu to her confidant. One of Mrs. Chu's good sisters worked in the Taiwei mansion, so she was sent there to inquire about the news. Soon, Mrs. Chu came back from the inquiry. "How is it? What did Mrs. Wu say when she returned?" Yang asked impatiently. Mrs. Chu bowed to Yang and smiled flatteringly. "Congratulations, madam, the good thing has come true." "What do you mean?" Yang was unsure. If she didn't ask clearly, she would not be able to sleep well tonight. The old sister of this old servant said that when Madame Wu returned home, she was very happy and ate half a bowl more for dinner. When Yang heard this, her heart dropped. She sent the maid in the house to tell Zhang Jiaojiao the news, and rewarded Mrs. Chu with a rich jade bracelet. Then he twisted his waist and went to the study to find Zhang Zhengming. The next day, when the Yang family and their daughter were having sweet dreams and happily preparing to welcome the Wu family to deliver Najib gifts, the matchmaker came. When Yang saw that there was no one behind the matchmaker to give Najib gifts, her heart was in her throat again. Before the matchmaker had even sat down, Yang couldn't help but ask, "Sister De Jin is here today?" The matchmaker laughed dryly and took out Zhang Jiaojiao's gangtai from her arms. "Madam, this is the second young lady's gangtai. Please keep it. There is no need to return third young master Wu's gangtai. It will be brought back after all." Yang was confused and her face darkened. "What does Madame Wu mean? Why can't I understand?" "Ahem, madam, please listen to the explanation from the common woman. Miss Jiang's horoscope does not match that of Mr. Wu. Mrs. Wu is happy to get married to Shang Shufu. Please forgive me for this matter." No matter how tactfully the matchmaker spoke, Yang understood clearly that her Jiao's marriage was ruined. Everyone came to cancel the engagement, and it was useless to talk any more, so Yang grabbed gangtai. She said to Mrs. Chu behind her, "Since the 8 characters don't match, we won't talk about this marriage. Go quickly and get Master Wu's gangtai." The matchmaker quickly stood up and said, "Wait a minute, madam." After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cup and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 85. What else do you have to say? My daughter is both virtuous and talented. She is outstanding in all aspects of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. If she leaves the Taiwei mansion, there will be many handsome men who want to marry her. Although Yang looks delicate, she is very strong-willed in her bones. Even if she was rejected, she still wanted to say a few tough words to let the matchmaker take them to the Wu family. The matchmaker raised her eyelids and glanced at Yang, then lowered her eyelids to hide the contempt in her eyes. She said respectfully, "Mrs. Wu means to ask for Miss Zhang to marry Mr. Wu-san. After all, the Zhang and Wu families are relatives, and outsiders will not say anything. Everyone just thinks that they heard it wrong and mistakenly got the names of Miss Zhangda and Miss Zhang are wrong. You." Yang was so angry that her lips trembled, and her throat seemed to be stuck, and she couldn't utter a word for a long time. The matchmaker has seen many people whose engagements were rejected being ridiculed and scolded, and Yang's reaction was also within her expectations. Who let the Wu family give more money? Even if Yang scolded her, she would ensure the marriage. She stood up and bowed to Yang. "Madam, calm down. I understand your feelings. The second lady will definitely be sad to change from the second lady to the eldest lady. As the mother of the second lady, you are right to be angry." Yang's face was dark, and the pearl hairpin on her head swayed slightly. She said in a bad tone, "The Wu family treats our Zhang family as a vegetable market. If they are not satisfied with this one, they will choose the next one. Is it because the eldest lady is not suitable, they will choose the third lady, a concubine?" The matchmaker's forehead jumped when she heard it, and she smiled and said, "Madam, you are joking. The third lady has not reached the age of marriage yet, and Mrs. Wu doesn't mean that. Besides, it is human nature to discuss marriage for the eldest lady first. The matchmaker's words almost put Yang on the fire. Everyone knew that the eldest lady Zhang was not born by Yang. If she insisted on refusing, it would be her stepmother's unkindness, and she would give a good marriage to the legitimate daughter. The matchmaker was a shrewd person. She didn't mention the resurrection of Miss Zhang, just as no one had ever heard the news of Miss Jiang's sudden death. Yang was thinking about how to refuse and clear herself. "Madam, the master is back," the maid whispered in her ear. Yang looked up and saw Zhang Zhengming striding over. "I pay my respects to Mr. Zhang." Before Yang could come to her senses, the matchmaker knelt down. Zhang Zhengming felt the atmosphere in the room was strange. He said no need to be polite and looked at Yang. At this time, Ms. Chu took the engagement letter from Mr. Wu San and put her hands in front of Yang. "Madam, the engagement letter is here." Zhang Zhengming was such a smart man. Seeing this, he knew without Yang's explanation that the Wu family was here to cancel the engagement. The matchmaker stood up and bowed, saying, "Lord Zhang is back just in time. Old Madam Wu wants to change the marriage to Miss Zhang. Madam is hesitating. Please give me some advice, Lord Zhang. Since ancient times, there has been order of seniority. Old Madam Wu is a person who values etiquette and rules. I believe Lord Zhang also thinks so." Zhang Zhenming's head buzzed and his body shook slightly. He looked at the matchmaker in disbelief and asked, "Say it again, what does old Madam Wu mean?" The person in front of him was an important official of the court after all, and he had a majestic aura. The matchmaker was also frightened. She took a step back and said old Madam Wu's meaning again. This time Zhang Zhengming was really dumbfounded. If he could get married to the Wu family, his career would still be expected to rise. But if he agreed, where could he find Zhang Xiu, even if he found her? After so many years, has she married outside? If he rejected the marriage, he would be unwilling. It was clearly an opportunity to get close to the rich and powerful. If she refused, she would offend Wu Taiwei and it would be difficult for her to move forward in the court in the future. It was not right to refuse, nor was it right to refuse. She was in a dilemma. After thinking for a while, Zhang Zhengming gritted his teeth and agreed to the marriage. The matchmaker returned with satisfaction after receiving the reward. Yang looked at the engagement letter of the third son of Wu on the table as if it was a hot potato. "Husband, we don't know where you is. If the Wu family comes to marry, where can we find a bride for him? You just need to prepare a dowry for that evil girl. I know the rest." Seeing her husband's desperate look, Yang suppressed the surging blood in her heart. She almost gushed out a mouthful of old blood. She also had to prepare a dowry for that bitch. If she married into the Wu family, the dowry was too thin. It was not Zhang Xiu who was criticized, but her stepmother. Seeing Zhang Zhengming leave in a hurry, Yang hurried to the backyard. Zhang Jiaojiao cursed immediately after hearing the news. "What a dead old woman, she thinks her Wu family is so great, my aunt must marry into a high family and trample her Taiwei mansion underfoot." There was no one else in the room. After Zhang Jiaojiao finished cursing, she collapsed on the small couch and cried. "Jiao don't worry, the matchmaker is right, the Wu family and the Zhang family still have an engagement. As long as we deny the exchange of marriages, it won't delay you from finding another good match." Yang didn't see her daughter sad, so she comforted her in a soft voice. Ms. Chu saw that she didn't find out the matter clearly, and she stood behind Yang with a guilty conscience. Zhang Jiaojiao stopped crying, and Kayan brought water for washing her face. "Second miss, I'm sorry, that old lady Wu is too cunning," she didn't say a word after returning from the temple. Ms. Chu's elder sister worked in the kitchen. How could she know that when Ms. Wu returned, she called her eldest daughter-in-law into the house and scolded her severely, and then punished her with house arrest for reflection. To reprimand the mistress, of course, she sent away the maids and servants. Jiao don't worry. If the Wu family is gone, there are still the Du family, the Wei family, and the Zhen family. Mother, the eldest grandson of the Zhen family is younger than me. This is unrealistic. Zhang Jiao had already figured out which young masters in the four major families in the capital were suitable for her age. Yang didn't care, then mother will find another matchmaker to ask if there are any suitable young masters from the Du family. Zhang Jiao's face was slightly red, and it was unclear whether she had just cried or was a little shy. Mother, I think the eldest young master Du is good, and his age is about the same as my daughter. When your father brings that bitch back, mother will ask the matchmaker to find out what the second wife of the Du family has to say. Du Zhong, the minister of the Dali temple, was the second child in the family. After Yang became the principal wife, she met the second wife of Du at the palace banquet. She originally wanted to go up to pay her respects and get to know her, but Empress Wei and the second wife of Du were chatting intimately, so she didn't dare to disturb them. Zhang Zhengming was busy looking for Zhang Shuyu in the capital. Summer flowers are mostly elegant, especially white flowers, which are fragrant. Zhang Shuyu was dealing with medicinal herbs in the space, and also harvested mature corn. She left the space, opened the bedroom door, and the fragrance of gardenia hit her face. In the outer room, Kyoju was arranging flowers. "Miss, you slept well. Look, I put the gardenias in the porcelain vase as you said. The whole room smells good, much better than incense." "Not bad, it smells good." "Where did Sushui go?" Zhang Shuyu looked outside and asked. "Mr. Nangong took the young master out again." "Oh. By the way, I almost forgot that the Zhen family sent a gift and I put it in the small hall." Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 86. The Real Family. Is it the real scholar's family? Zhang Shuyu asked in surprise. It had only been a few days since we moved here, so why did the Zhen family want to make friends with the Zhang family? She was surprised. After all, many people didn't know who lived in Zhang Mansion. Qiuju put the last flower into the porcelain vase. It's the butler of the true university scholars family. He said he wanted to congratulate us on our move. Zhang Shuyu went to the small hall and looked at the gift sent by the Zhen family. It was an exquisite root carving ornament. While Qiuju was collecting the gifts into the warehouse, Zhang Shuyu took out some red ginseng from the space. When Qiuju came back, Zhang Shuyu had packed the red ginseng in a brocade box. "Qiuju, go to Zhen Mansion yourself." Qiuju glanced at the brocade box on the table and immediately understood. She smiled like a fox and said, "I understand that it is human nature to treat people with courtesy." The villain in her heart clapped her hands and applauded the young lady. This was the right thing to do. The young lady might even be able to hit a real young man when she throws the embroidered ball in the future. Qiuju walked out of the gate and went straight to Zhenfu behind King Yunzai. The housekeeper of Zhenfu personally accepted the gift in return. The housekeeper smiled and said, "It is said that distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors. Mr. Zhang is too polite. My old lady has been feeling unwell recently. In a few days, the old lady will definitely come to visit me." The villain's surname is Zhen. It was given by the master. "I have a message for Mr. and Ms. Zhang. Our two families will be traveling more in the future. If you need any help, just let me know." The real butler smiled warmly, and Qiuju was stunned. "Master Zhang?" "No, true housekeeper, you are mistaken. We in Zhang Mansion only have young ladies, not lords. Miss Zhang is a female householder. This time it was the real housekeeper's turn to look confused. The big house opposite is worth a lot of money. It's really amazing that a girl can buy it. Qiuju said goodbye and went home with a smile on her face. Qiuju happily walked to the street. Suddenly, a familiar figure jumped into her eyes. Why did they come? While he was stunned, he saw the housekeeper of Shangshu Mansion walking into King Yunzai with a few servants. Qiuju quickly ducked aside to observe. After a while, a few people came out and went to an inn not far away. Seeing the housekeeper of Shangshu Mansion walking away with a few people, Qiuju touched her purse and luckily there was some silver in it. Qiuju quickly walked into King Yunzai. When the boy saw her entering, he greeted her with a smile on his face and asked enthusiastically, "Do you want to read a book or buy the 4 treasures of the study?" The dress Qiuju wore was made of thin huanhua brocade. In order to support the girl's appearance, she spent almost all her money on it. The servant couldn't tell from her clothes that she was a maid. Qiuju said boldly, "I want a blank piece of paper, the best kind." "Okay, girl, please wait a moment. The best white paper is placed on the top shelf." Soon, the boy took out a piece of white paper. As he wrapped it, the boy said, "You are so lucky, this is the only piece of white paper left in the study." Qiuju asked the price, handed over the broken silver, and asked with a smile, "A few people left empty-handed just now. Do they want to buy more?" The boy shook his head, "No, they were looking for someone. They took a portrait and asked me if I had seen the girl come to the study to buy anything." After the boy finished speaking, he smiled at Qiuju and said, "The portrait is of a very beautiful girl." Qiuju took the wrapped white paper and thanked her, walked to the door and took a look into the room where the scholar was reading. I saw Nanggong Ziyu sitting at the desk, Sui Sui sitting at the desk, and several scholars smiling happily around talking to Sui Sui. There were bursts of laughter in the room. Qiuju's eyebrows arched. The young master was so cute, he was popular wherever he went. Qiuju didn't go in to disturb him and walked quickly towards the opposite side. "Miss, guess who I saw?" Qiuju entered the room, handed the things in her hand to Lan'er, and walked quickly towards Zhang Shiyu. Zhang Shiyu put down the medical book in her hand, raised her lips and smiled. Who else could it be? The Zhang family. Young lady is smart. You guessed it right. It's the butler of Shangshu Mansion. He took the portrait and led his servants to look for you from door to door in the study and inn. What's there to guess? The Wu family must have broken off the engagement, and Zhang Jiaojiao wants to settle a score with me, Zhang Shiyu said lightly and lightly. Qiuju looked gloating. Zhang Jiaojiao is 20 years old this year. She was disowned by the Wu family, so she has no choice but to get married. Zhang Shiyu stretched out her arms. "Qiuju, go and clean up. Kang Yun has gone out to deliver a message. Call Gao Mu and let's go out and find a shop." "Miss, do you still want to open a medical clinic?" Zhang Shiyu nodded. "Of course, in such a huge mansion, you have to make money, right?" She is developing medicine to treat epidemics and does not open a medical clinic. If she suddenly comes up with epidemic prescriptions in the future, it would be too sudden. Qiuju asked worriedly, "What should I do if I meet someone from Shangshu Mansion outside later?" "Let's go out openly. I don't want to eat the rice from Zhang Zhenming's family now. What do I have to worry about?" Qiuju thought about it again. Yes, she was still looking forward to it. When she met the housekeeper of Shangshu Mansion who was arrogant and disdainful, she would have to give him a few words. Zhang Shiyu sat on the carriage and looked up at both sides of the street. She walked 2 nearby streets and finally stopped at Baikou Street, not far from Gihua Street. Qiuju saw the young lady looking at the shops on both sides of the street, and she suggested, "Miss, I have already counted them. There are already 3 medical clinics on this street. Let's open a 4th one." Zhang Shiyu understood what Qiuju meant, and she asked back, if you are hungry, would you go to the street with only one restaurant or the street with many restaurants? Kyoja said without thinking, of course, go to the street with more restaurants. Miss, that's not right. Can eating be the same as taking medicine? Why not? No matter what business, people always compare prices. Gao Mu also understood it and said the key point, Miss, I will go to the dental clinic now. It's too hot outside. Let's go back to the mansion and wait for the dental clinic to send the brochure and then slowly choose. Zhang Shuyu nodded, okay, let the dental clinic know when the carriage passes by. Just when Zhang Shuyu stepped on the stepping stool, she saw a crowd of people on the street. Get out of the way, someone fainted again. Zhang Shuyu retracted her foot and looked over, only to see a group of people carrying several people to the clinic. Miss, those people look like that group of people. Qiuju saw the clue, no wonder they look familiar, they are bandits. Gao Mu, go and see what's going on. Gao Mu walked quickly to the clinic opposite. As soon as he reached the door of the clinic, he heard a man's anxious voice saying, Doctor, please help us. He hasn't eaten for 2 days and has been kneeling for most of the day. I wonder if he has heat stroke or is hungry. Another man said, Jing Zhaoyan is too much. We have been kneeling for most of the day and didn't give us a sip of water. It's really a waste of life. The doctor hurriedly asked the medicine boy to bring water, and Gao Mu turned and left. Listening to Gao Mu's story about the refugees, Zhang Shuyu was silent for a moment. She waved to Gao Mu and explained it like this. Gao Mu widened his eyes, little, miss, is this okay? After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 87. Zhang Shuyu glanced sideways at Gao Mu, they will only be willing to open the warehouse to stockpile food if they keep stocking. Otherwise, it will be useless even if those idiots kneel to death in front of the Jingzai Yamen. Gao Mu. This, seems to be the truth. Fortunately, the young lady didn't become the king, otherwise she would have taken the throne. Qiuju saw Gao Mu walking toward the group of people, and she helped Zhang Shuyu get into the carriage. Miss, do you want Gao Mu to teach those people to beg for food? Zhang Shuyu opened the side curtains and looked out and said to Qiuju, although they have done evil things, if they know how to turn around, they have not lost their humanity. It can be regarded as giving them some guidance. Of course Zhang Shuyu would not say that it would be beneficial to Sushui's father if someone added fuel to the flames. The master and servant quickly left Baiko Street and returned to the gate of Zhang Mansion. Zhang Shuyu and Qiuju got off the carriage one after another. Across the street, Nanggong Ziyu and Sushui were having fun in the study. You don't wake up to the dawn when you sleep in spring, and you can hear the singing of birds everywhere. Sui Sui shook his head and memorized Mengheiran's Spring Dawn. Sushui was born with a beautiful face, and his cute look when he recited poems made the scholars want to pinch his little face. Young master, who taught you this poem? Before Sui Sui had time to answer, another scholar pushed the questioner aside and pushed forward, Young master, can you read another poem? Sushui stared at the scholar and blinked, why should I read another song? It would be enough for his mother to let him show off occasionally, but it would not be good if he had 300 Tang poems published all at once. The scholar was stunned and said, I will give you 2 cute rabbits, and you can just recite another one, okay. The scholar went all out. This child was so cute. When no one was teasing him, he would just read by himself. Nanggong Ziyu sat quietly aside, enjoying the envious looks from everyone. Just when Sushui was about to nod, Nanggong Ziyu coughed lightly and reminded Sushui, ahem, this is the study. Sui Sui smiled softly at the scholar, you're just coaxing a kid, there are no rabbits here. The scholar scratched his head and said, just wait, my home is not far from here, and I will pick it up for you right away. Hey. No need. Before Nanggong Ziyu finished speaking, The scholar rushed out of the study and disappeared. The other scholars laughed at this scene. Xia Yunchen, come back quickly, we are all waiting to hear the masterpiece. The scholar chased him to the door and shouted at the scholar's back. Sui Sui sat back from the desk in the armchair. The other scholars were sitting on long benches, and several of them sat together. Someone quietly brought an armchair and placed it where Sui Sui had sat. A scholar came over to talk to him and said, "Sir, you are so lucky. The young master is so smart. He will definitely be named on the gold medal list and wear a red robe in the future." Then he looked at the few scholars around him and said, "It's not like us. We have failed the exam many times." Just as Sushui was about to explain, Nangang Zaya gave him a look. Sushui pursed his lips and picked up the travel notes in front of him and continued to read. Nangang Zaya raised her hand to the scholar, "Thank you, brother. As long as the child is happy, healthy, and happy, it is more important than being named on the gold list." He heard this from Zhang Shiyu. Now the imperial court is nepotistic. It's a joke for us to stick to the beam and stab people in the buttocks. If there is no wise emperor, then it's okay not to wear the red robe, a scholar standing in the back said with emotion. Speaking of Ming Jun, Nangang Zaya couldn't help but think of King Yan'an. He has lived in Yan'an for so many years. The people of Yan'an live and work in peace and contentment and live a prosperous life. In his heart, the king of Yan'an has the potential to be a wise king. You know, right? A group of refugees have sneaked into the capital. Early this morning, a group of people from Wuanjiang all knelt in front of the Jingzai Yamen. Why are you kneeling there? Shouldn't you be kneeling at the entrance of the palace? Do you think the emperor would care about a bunch of rabble going to the palace gate and kneeling on their knees? That's right, the emperor is too busy to sing and dance, so he won't care about the lives of those refugees. Everyone spoke to each other, each speaking out about the injustice of the world and the unhappiness in his heart. At this time, Xia Yunchen ran in carrying a bamboo cage. He put the bamboo cage under Sushui's feet and said hurriedly, "Young master, remember, this is a rabbit from the Tatars. Just feed it with grass. I owe you the poem for now. I will come and listen to you read it tomorrow." Sushui. If rabbits don't eat grass, do they eat meat? After Xia Yunchen finished speaking, he waved to the scholars, "Everyone, hurry up and follow me to the Prime Minister's mansion. Those refugees are going to the Prime Minister's mansion." Ah! Are the refugees going to the Prime Minister's mansion? The Prime Minister's mansion is raising them, isn't that looking for death? No, let's all go over and take a look. Don't let the servants of the Prime Minister's mansion take someone's life. The scholars are usually elegant, but now they are like bloody soldiers in the military camp, rolling up their sleeves and cursing, filled with righteous indignation. In an instant, not a single scholar in the room is left. No, there is one person left, Yang Mao. Yang Mao stood up and cupped his hands towards Nangang Ziyu, "My legs and feet are not good, do you want me to go and see you too? I'm going to take the child back, and this rabbit needs to be settled," Nangang Ziyu said and looked at the bamboo cage on the ground. "See you tomorrow." Yang Mao smiled at Sushui and limped out. Nangang Ziyu breathed a sigh of relief, touched Sushui's head and said, "Let's go back to Uncle Nangang. Why don't you explain that they all misunderstood that we are father and son?" Nangang Ziyu. This kid is so serious that he can compete with his mother. Sui Sui, the capital is in chaos. If someone knows your father, you and your mother will be in danger. If someone asks you in the future, just say I am your father, okay? I am happy to take the blame. Will my father be unhappy if he knows? Sui Sui felt that what Nangang Ziyu said made sense, but it seemed that something was wrong. He tilted his head and asked. Nangang Ziyu looked serious, "Your father knows that I am protecting you, he is happy. Okay then. From now on, you are your father outside, and Uncle Nangang when you return home." Sui Sui heard from his mother that his identity was too sensitive, and if he was not careful, he would be killed. After the two discussed it, Nangong Ziyu took Sui Sui in one hand and carried the bamboo cage in the other hand and walked slowly across the street. As soon as the two walked to the door, they saw Gao Mu sending someone out. Who is he? Fang Yazi, the young lady is going to open a clinic in the capital. Walking into Xingyu courtyard, Sui Sui shouted loudly, "Mother, what do you see here?" "A rabbit." Before Zhang Shiyu had time to put down the contract in her hand, Sui Sui ran over with her short legs and threw herself into her arms. Looking up at the door, she saw Nangong Ziyu's fox eyes staring at the bamboo cage in his hand. "Mr. Nangong, did you buy it?" "No, a scholar gave it to me and said it was a rabbit from the Tatters." At this time, Mei ran in with a panic, "Miss, it's bad, the capital is going to be in chaos." After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 88. What did you say? Zhang Shiyu took a breath of air. Did that fellow lead an attack so quickly? When Zhang Shiyu was wondering, Mei took a breath and said, "When I went out to buy something, I saw many people running towards the Prime Minister's mansion. I heard that the granaries in the Prime Minister's mansion were robbed." Mayer finished speaking in one breath, worried. With so many refugees, who knows if they will break into Jiang's mansion? Zhang Shiyu was even more surprised this time. She didn't let those people rob her. She told Mayer, "Go and tell everyone, don't leave the house today if you have nothing to do." Meyer immediately turned around and ran out. Qiuju approached Zhang Shiyu and whispered in a low voice, "Didn't the lady ask them to follow Prime Minister Wei and eat when Prime Minister Wei eats? Why are they robbing again?" Zhang Shiyu spread her hands, "Maybe there were too many people and they were very hungry, so they lost control. I didn't expect this result." Her original intention was to let the refugees stalk her and make it impossible for Prime Minister Wei to eat. When he was forced to have no way out by everyone, he would always solve the problem. In the end, she still underestimated human nature. Zhang Shiyu put down her ears and said, "Son, you can play by yourself while mother goes out and takes a look." Remembering that Lin Miaoxiao said that there were many thugs in the Prime Minister's mansion, Zhang Shiyu felt a chill in her heart. If a refugee dies as a result, she will not be able to escape the blame. "Sui Sui, uncle will also take you out to have a look." Nangong Ziyu also wanted to see what it was like for those unarmed scholars to see that scene. Before Zhang Shiyu could leave, he bent down and copied it with his hand. Sui Sui disappeared in an instant like a pendant on his body. "Miss, this rabbit's urine smells really bad, what should I do?" Qiuju said as she lifted up the bamboo cage, and there was indeed a puddle of rabbit urine on the ground. "You ask Lanner to call someone to clean it, and we will also go to the Prime Minister's mansion to have a look. I can just put the rabbit in that deserted lawn." After Qiuju went out, Zhang Shiyu opened the bamboo cage and saw two chubby rabbits squatting inside. She didn't have time to think too much. She waved her sleeves and two snow-white meat rabbits were put into the space. The Prime Minister's palace was in a mess, and the female relatives were hiding in a courtyard and trembling with fear. The servants with swords in their hands protected the courtyard where the female relatives lived as tightly as an iron barrel. The Prime Minister's wife has always been arrogant in the past, but she has never encountered anything so aggrieved. There was a fierce look in her eyes, and she said in a deep voice, "Take advantage of the chaos and take the leader into the cellar and lock him up." The housekeeper bowed and said, "Madam, it's no longer possible. There are many people and scholars outside watching." Mrs. Wei, who comes from a well-known family, especially understands the usefulness of scholars. If something happens to someone in the Prime Minister's mansion at this time, those scholars will not only be unable to save the Prime Minister's mansion, but also the Queen in the palace will be implicated. "What are you doing here? Why don't you quickly rescue the master from those untouchables?" Seeing that her daughter-in-law couldn't make up her mind, Mrs. Wei poked the ground hard with her crutch and shouted to the servants outside. Seeing that her mother-in-law was anxious, the Prime Minister's wife quickly stepped forward to comfort her. "Mom, you can't do anything. My daughter-in-law will tell the housekeeper to take someone to the front hall." If she wasn't afraid that the refugees would bump into her, she would have rushed out long ago. "Ancestor, madam, please calm down. Those refugees are just looking for a bite to eat. They did not come to the backyard," the housekeeper said with a wave of his hand, and led more than 10 servants to the front hall. In the front hall, Prime Minister Wei and his servant were surrounded by refugees and could not go anywhere. The refugees were carrying rice bags in their hands, and some were chewing steamed buns. Some people even had fruits in their hands and were gnawing on them, and they didn't let go of anything that was edible. "Master Prime Minister, we have been kneeling at the Yamen gate for so long, and some of us have fainted from hunger, but you are hiding in the Prime Minister's mansion, feasting on fish and meat. Are you worthy of sitting in that high position?" A man looked like a man who had read a book. He asked angrily. Prime Minister Wei was so angry that he was shaking all over. As soon as the food was put on the table, a group of people rushed in from nowhere and robbed all the food on his table. Even the kitchen where the servants of the house were eating was not spared. The refugees climbed up the stairs outside the wall to enter the mansion. At this time, the door of the Prime Minister's mansion had been opened, and it was unclear whether they were the onlookers or the refugees. A servant looked at the trapped Prime Minister Wei with a sword in his hand. Without the master's instructions, the thugs dressed as servants did not dare to take action. There were so many refugees that the large halls were full of people, and the servants were forced to retreat. You are so lawless. Is this breaking the law? As the Prime Minister, you don't let refugees into the city in times of disaster, and you don't open warehouses to release food to help the people. Your body is left to eat, and you are in vain as a minister. It is people like you who are guilty." A young man in neat clothes, looking like a scholar, pointed angrily at Prime Minister Wei and asked. All the people behind him said in unison, "Yes, the common people are fat and do nothing. The imperial court is full of people like this. What's the difference between us and raising a bunch of maggots?" The scholar-looking man set a precedent, and immediately there were complaints, accusations, and curses. Those refugees who had not studied and didn't know much started to curse so loudly that even the queen was dragged in to scold them. "Tisk, tisk, tisk. I thought life would be better under the emperor's feet. It turns out that it's not as prosperous as the people of Yan'an." Someone in the crowd said something boldly. "That is, King Yan'an has also rescued so many refugees. These things should be done by the emperor. If Emperor Renzong knew that the people of Wanling Kingdom were in dire straits, the dragon gate of the imperial mausoleum would not be able to be closed. If we don't get the relief food from the court today, no one will leave today. I'm sure the queen won't want to let her family starve to death. Yes. We won't leave." Some refugees simply sat on the ground. Suddenly, the hall was full of people sitting on the ground. Prime Minister Wei was so angry that his nose was crooked. This group of unruly people were lawless and ignored him, an official appointed by the court who was second only to the emperor. The public resentment in the Prime Minister's mansion reached a peak. Everyone was cursing the incompetent person in the palace and praising King Yan'an as a great man with a broad mind. Seeing the situation getting out of control, Prime Minister Wei shouted, "Shut up! I will write a letter to the palace and ask the emperor to send food to everyone to tide over the difficulties. Will he ask the emperor to send people to arrest us? Since he won't let us live, let's just burn down the Prime Minister's mansion and fight to the death." Prime Minister Wei's body swayed, and the servant behind him hurriedly supported him. "Sir, these people are really crazy." At this time, the housekeeper of the Prime Minister's mansion just walked out of the crowd, and he ordered a servant behind him, "Hurry up and prepare the pen and ink." The housekeeper and the servant squeezed to the side of Prime Minister Wei and whispered, "Master, these people are like hungry wolves, they can do anything." He looked back at the crowd again. "There are many scholars watching outside, this matter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 94. In the afternoon, Zhang Shiyu took a short nap in a room in the backyard. Kaiju and Yin Qiao were not sleepy, and they were talking and identifying herbs in front. When Zhang Shiyu came out, there were already more than 10 women with girls waiting outside. Zhang Shiyu interviewed them one by one, asking questions for the girls to answer. After a round of screening, only 6 people were qualified. "Girl, please keep my girl. My girl is very hard-working, and she is good at washing clothes and cooking." The unsuccessful woman begged with red eyes. The other women also echoed, "Yes. Our girls can do things, but they just don't study." Zhang Shiyu shook her head secretly. She said to the women who were rejected, "If you get sick and the doctor can't even write a prescription, would you dare to drink the medicine prescribed by such a doctor?" The women were stunned for a moment, and then whispered, "Girls can learn slowly." "That's right, monks are all learned by people. What's so difficult? My mother-in-law can deliver babies, but she can't read. It's really like a scholar meeting a soldier, and it's hard to explain." Qiuju couldn't listen anymore. She said with a pleasant face, "It's true that monks are all learned by people, but they also need wisdom, just like Master Huiwen of Qinglian Temple. If all monks have wisdom, wouldn't they all be called masters?" The women were slightly stunned when they heard it, and then blushed. "That's it, you girls are still young, take them home and learn slowly. If you can't learn medicine, you can also learn embroidery, light incense, etc." Zhang Shiyu could only say so much. The girls she rejected were not bad looking, but their eyes lacked spirit and they had never been to school, so Zhang Shiyu could do nothing to help them. Not everyone can learn medicine. If you learn well, you can save the world, but if you don't learn well, you can steal money and kill people. So she was not careless in choosing people. The unsuccessful people left with regrets. Zhang Shiyu explained the rules of the clinic en Yuan to the girls. The girls were as happy as Yin Qiao. The girls were not from wealthy families, and some of them had small businesses. Their families were not far from here, and Zhang Shiyu was very satisfied. She asked Kaiju and Yin Qiao to lead the girls to start with knowing the medicinal materials. Seeing that it was still early, she sat behind the screen to study the prescription for the epidemic. The girls were all of the same age and soon became familiar with each other. After these few days, Zhang Shiyu prepared a plague prescription. She calculated the time and the possibility of a fever outbreak was very high. Heat epidemics are warm and hot in nature, highly contagious and can cause rapidly spreading exogenous heat diseases. Heat epidemics include damp heat epidemics, summer heat epidemics, and warm heat epidemics. Malaria may also occur. She has a general understanding of the compatibility of malaria, and the formula for malaria is more difficult than that of plague. She has to prepare the prescriptions for these possible epidemics as soon as possible. She knows the basic pathology and which medicinal materials can inhibit it, but this is an era of Chinese medicine, and it is too difficult for her to find a formula to replace Western medicine. As the sun sets in the west, for the safety of the girls, when Gao Mu came to the clinic to pick up Zhang Shiyu, she asked Gao Mu to send the girls home one by one. In Qingyunzai, Yang Mao quietly looked out the window in a daze. Last night, he learned from Dong Mei that Zhang Shiyu was still alive. After being sent back to her parents' home by Yang, Wang Poza was not reused by the mistress, and she was assigned to the kitchen to do odd jobs. She has been looking for an opportunity to find a way to return to the Shangshu mansion. One day, she was wandering outside the Shangshu mansion and saw a maid she had been friends with before coming out of the corner gate. The maid told her that the eldest daughter had returned to the capital, and that it was the time for the second daughter to discuss marriage, so she should keep her mouth shut. The scholars in the study left one after another. At this time in the past, Yang Mao would have gone home long ago. Just as he was wandering in the void, a magnificent carriage stopped in front of the Zhang mansion opposite. He was refreshed and hurriedly limped out. A woman in a lake blue gauze dress came down from the carriage. The woman's shoulders were as sharp as willows, her eyes were bright and her teeth were white, she was as beautiful as ice and snow, like a fairy. The woman got off the carriage and raised her head. "Cousin Shiyu." Hearing a familiar voice, Zhang Shiyu stopped and frowned and looked in the direction of the voice. Kyoju followed Zhang Shiyu's line of sight. Kyoju saw Yang Mao limping over, and she quickly stood in front of Zhang Shiyu. "Miss, go in quickly, it's Yang Mao, it's so unlucky to meet him here." Gao Mu put down the reins and stood beside Zhang Shiyu, looking at Yang Mao with unfriendly eyes. Zhang Shiyu pulled Kyoju, "The capital is so small, it's only a matter of time before we meet. He's just a cripple, what tricks can he play?" Seeing Zhang looking at him, Yang Mao was very excited. "Cousin Shiyu, is it really you?" "Sir, please respect yourself, I'm not your cousin, you've got the wrong person." Zhang Shiyu's tone was cold, as if she had never known the person in front of her. "Yes, I'm sorry." Yang Mao was shocked by the murderous aura emanating from Gao Mu. He had a lot to say to Zhang Shiyu, but now he only had "I'm sorry." He raised his head and forgot to look at the plaque of Zhang Mansion, then looked at Zhang Shiyu and quickly lowered his head. Then he limped back home. "This time, he is quite sensible." Qiuju secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Mao's temperament used to be that he would not give up until he struggled with him no matter what. The next day, Yang dressed up like a peacock and took Zhang Jiaojiao to the Prime Minister's mansion. After entering the main gate of the Prime Minister's mansion, the housekeeper settled Yang's mother and daughter, Mrs. Chu and Kayan, in the front hall and sat down before sending someone into the backyard to report. Mrs. Yang thought that the housekeeper would take her directly to see Mrs. Wei. Zhang Jiaojiao's face suddenly turned ugly. "Jiao, this is the Queen's natal family, an unusual official family. Yang means that it is reasonable to neglect them." Zhang Jiaojiao lowered her eyes and suppressed the displeasure in her heart. After a while, a charming woman walked out of the inner courtyard with a smile. "Hey! Mrs. Zhang, long time no see. I'm sorry to hear you come from afar. Please come in quickly." Yang was slightly stunned. The person who came to receive them was Prime Minister Wei's aunt. Before Yang became a stepmother, the two of them had met several times. "Aunt Chen, why is it you?" Mrs. Yang fully expected that the one receiving them would be the Prime Minister's wife, or at least the principal wife of the second room of the Wei family. "But, you still don't think of yourself as the principal wife of Zhang Mansion?" "Just now when the maid went to report to the old lady's courtyard, I happened to go over to say hello. So, I took the initiative to invite you." Aunt Chen was laughing so hard that her hairpins were shaking, and she looked extremely smooth. Aunt Chen is interested. "I heard that the old lady was frightened, so I brought Jiao here to visit. I don't know if the old lady is okay." Aunt Chen stepped forward and took Yang's arm, lowered her voice, and said mysteriously, "The old lady is in good spirits, but the one in the palace, seems to be in trouble." After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 95. Yang was confused. She looked around and saw that the maids from the Prime Minister's mansion were about 10 feet away from them. She asked, "Are you talking about the Queen Mother?" Aunt Chen whispered, "It's the Queen. Empress, she's so young, it's impossible." "Is she sick?" Aunt Chen nodded, "Someone from the palace came to report the news yesterday." I don't know the specific situation. The eldest lady cried a lot last night and went to the palace early this morning. Yang understood. No wonder it was Aunt Chen who came out to receive her. The eldest lady relied on her daughter being the queen and set rules for the concubines in the mansion. Aunt Chen had long been dissatisfied. Speaking of the queen's illness, there was no sadness on her face, as if there was a hint of gloating, but a closer look showed that there was no sadness. As she spoke, she walked into the second hanging flower gate. Yang and Aunt Chen were whispering in front, and Zhang Jiaojiao followed behind, looking up from time to time to look at the layout of the courtyard. Pavilions, rock eyries, waterside pavilions, green pines and cypresses are dotted with exotic flowers and plants. In the corridor, there is a bonsai every 2 meters. It is really a family of honor and nobility for several generations. The flying eaves and corners, the pearl curtain gatehouse, all show luxury. The huge mansion, looking around, the garden alone covers half the mansion of the Shangshu mansion. Aunt Chen and Yang were almost done talking when she suddenly remembered that there was a girl following behind her. She stopped and looked back. Are you the second Miss Zhang? I was so happy to see your mother that I forgot that the second Miss was here too. Zhang Jiaojiao smiled faintly at Aunt Chen. Yang took over and said, the zither player at home has something to do today, so I asked Jiao to come with me. Miss Zhang is 20 this year, right? Why is she still learning the zither? Madame Zhang will see the old lady later, can you ask her for a nanny from the palace? Yang originally wanted to show off that her daughter was good at zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. But she backfired and was choked by Aunt Chen's words and couldn't speak for a long time. Zhang Jiaojiao understood what Aunt Chen meant. Just now, she heard that an aunt came to receive them, and Zhang Jiaojiao didn't bow to Aunt Chen. Is Aunt Chen saying that she didn't know the rules in a roundabout way? What Aunt Chen doesn't know is that whether it is zither or painting, learning is endless. If you don't practice for 3 days, your hands will become unfamiliar. My daughter's zither master is in his 30s and is still learning. What's so strange about this? When a junior implied that she was ignorant, Aunt Chen's face suddenly became ugly. Humph. A concubine turned into a legitimate daughter, and she really thought she was a talented woman. We're here. The old lady is inside. You two can go in. Aunt Chen raised her hand and pointed to the courtyard in front. Aunt Chen, you. Yang didn't expect Aunt Chen to have no intention of accompanying her in at all. Just let this maid accompany you in. I have other things to do, so I won't accompany you. Aunt Chen left her room and led the maid in her room to turn around and leave. The mother and daughter looked at each other. In the Prime Minister's mansion, even the aunt was so arrogant. The maid in the Prime Minister's mansion hurriedly helped Aunt Chen to smooth things over. Today, the eldest lady went to the palace. Aunt Chen took care of all the big and small things in the mansion. You two should not worry too much. There are many people and many things in the mansion, and Aunt Chen is also burdened. Yang came to her senses. It turned out that Aunt Chen was the most favored person in front of the Prime Minister. No wonder he didn't take her, the wife of the minister, seriously. She asked Mrs. Chu and Kayan to wait outside the courtyard. The mother and daughter followed the maid into an exquisite courtyard. Good luck, old lady. Before they could see clearly the old lady Wei who was sitting at the top, Yang and Zhang Jiaojiao bowed. Old lady Wei met the two in the flower hall. Old lady Wei was born in a marquise mansion. Although she had a head full of silver hair, her hair was meticulously tied with pearl hairpins, and she was full of nobility. Her face with ravines and gullies was majestic without anger, and her old eyes were not very clear and shining. The furnishings in the room were even more luxurious and dazzling. Are you Madame Zhang? I am old and my eyesight is not good. Please take a seat. The maid next to old lady Wei hurriedly stepped forward and led the two to take a seat. The maidservant on the side brought tea and cakes. Old lady, you look good. I think you are still young. Yang's butt just touched the armchair and she sent out a rainbow fart. Flattery never wears out. Yang's words really made old lady Wei smile. The one sitting down is Miss Zhang, right? She looks just like Madame Zhang, with delicate features. Whose son is she promised to? Zhang Jiaojiao leaned forward shyly. Thank you for the compliment, old lady. I am still young and still waiting to be married. Madame Wei smiled and praised, she is a filial girl. She wants to stay at home and spend more years with her parents. Madame Wei had no idea how old a girl from the Shangshu mansion was. She was just saying a few polite words. Madam, you don't know, my second girl has been a 15-year-old for many years. Maybe it's not her destiny yet, Yang said tactfully. Madame Wei swept her eyes across Zhang Jiaojiao's face and changed the subject. I have to thank your Lord Zhang for coming in time that day, otherwise my old bones would have been scared to pieces. Old madam, you are joking. Everyone in the capital knows that the old lady was born in a marquis's mansion. She is resolute and courageous, and she does things swiftly. How can a few low-class people scare the old lady? It's just that the low-class people disturbed the old lady's peace, and I feel a little uncomfortable. Old Madame Wei was very pleased to hear this, and smiled and said to the maid beside her, Look, Madame Zhang is really worthy of being the wife of the Shangshu. Look at how she praised me, an old lady. The maid on the side glanced at Yang, then turned to look at Madame Wei with a flattering smile. I think what Madame Zhang said is reasonable. Madam, how could she be frightened by the lowly people? It's just that so many lowly people entering the house is very unlucky. The maid had been with the noble for a long time and had completely forgotten that she was a slave. In terms of nobility, she was lower than the lowly people. Zhang Jiaojiao also wanted to agree with a few words, but she was afraid that she would not be virtuous enough if she talked too much, so she sat quietly and watched everyone talking and laughing with a smile on her face. In the eyes of others, her appearance was dignified, gentle, and a little well-behaved. Madame Wei saw it and thought to herself that although the second Miss Zhang was not as good as the eldest Miss Zhang, she was a beautiful girl from a small family and looked okay. If she was still a concubine, it would be appropriate to assign her to the eldest grandson as a concubine. Now that Yang has been promoted to a successor, the concubine has become a legitimate daughter, and it would not be bad to match her with the child of her second son. Madame Wei had a warm smile on her face, thinking about which grandson from the second house would be suitable for her. The grandsons from the second house of the Wei family were not as talented as those from the first house. Although they were not talented, they had the relationship with the queen, and their adult grandsons all got jobs in the court. They were all well-off families. After a while of asking about each other's well-being and chatting about family matters, Yang stood up to say goodbye. Madame Wei politely asked her to stay for dinner, but Yang didn't dare to stay for dinner. The mother and daughter stood up and saluted again. Grandma. A clear voice of a man came from the door.